Morning, everybody. It's 10 o'clock and it's time to get started. I'm glad you could all join us today. If it's your first time, you are in listen-only mode. Please direct any questions. You can type them into the question box, and I will do my best to keep an eye out for them on my other screen here and answer them for you. But if there's any questions that you have that we don't answer during this session, please feel free to give us a call afterwards, and we will go into further detail with you if that will help. I'm glad that you all are here. I just wanted to do one quick reminder for those of you who have not signed up for Sage Summit yet. If you choose to do so, it is in Chicago this year, so that's just a hop, skip, and a jump for us. It is your opportunity to talk to the Sage people and voice your opinions and see what's coming down the road in the software within the next year or so. I am attending, and I would love to see any of you there that can attend this year. Okay, so let's get started today. We're going to talk about the mysteries of period end close. Now, it's really not that much of a mystery, though the question that I get most often is, do I have to? And what modules do I need to do it in? Well, you know, we would like you to close the month end in all the modules that have a month end closing. And one of the main reasons is, you know, first of all, things do happen, which we'll discuss later in the session. Things do happen during month end close, but it also helps prevent people posting into the wrong period. So if we, and it also gives us an opportunity to kind of pay attention to our data and make sure that everything is right and you know, what it should be. But let's preface this with, before you can even do period end close, you have to actually do a little reconciliation. And a lot of people say, wow, you know, what do you mean? What am I reconciling? Well, there's several modules that we really need to look at the end of each month, one of those being the purchase order, the other being inventory. And my two best, you know, ones to look at are accounts payable and accounts receivable, because we want to make sure that the data in these modules tie back to our general ledger. So those of you who don't own purchase order and inventory, just hang with me, hang tight there here for a few minutes. But this is a really important discussion that we have to have with the people that have these modules. So before you can even start the month-end process, we want you to reconcile the data in these modules. So what am I talking about? Let's go straight into purchase order, and we're going to go to period end. And a lot of people don't realize that this is here, but there's a report here called Purchases Clearing. Now, I want you to keep this in mind. When you do a receipt of goods in purchase order, what is it doing? It is debiting inventory and crediting a temporary liability account called Purchases Clearing. Now, why is this a temporary liability account? It's because we don't have the AP invoice yet. So once we do receipt of invoice, it's going to debit purchases clearing and it's going to credit accounts payable. But we have to have that liability on our system, okay? So at the end of each month, we need to print this purchases clearing report, okay? And what we do here is we look at this report and we have to tie it back to our general ledger. So what I'm doing here is I'm going to look at my total here on my report, and then I'm going to go into my general ledger, and I'm going to make sure that that ties to my purchases clearing GL account number. But before I do that, I also want you to take a really good look at this report, those of you who are responsible for it, because how do our POs close? Well, quantity ordered, quantity received, and quantity invoiced have to be the same. And that's what causes them to close, and therefore they will come off this report. Now you'll notice here, I have a problem. I have a problem here. How can I have a -1? How can I have a -10? So this is also an opportunity for you to go back through and find out, hey, what did somebody do, or why aren't these closed? There are several of you that I could open up your purchasing right now today, this purchases clearing report, and I could probably find some stuff from 2010 or 2005, you know, because these POs have never cleared. And that's one of the questions that we always get. Why don't these POs drop off? Well, they're not complete. those quantities are not complete. So there are utilities that we can use to get rid of those really old ones if we don't want to go out and research that. But let's go back to our account maintenance. And what we're going to do is we're going to go down here to our purchases clearing account, which is right here. And I'm going to go to my history tab so I can see what my balance is. Now, I'm going to kind of cheat a little bit, pull up this report, and I'm going to put my account maintenance there. And I know here I tie. So great, perfect. I have done my homework for purchases, for the purchase order module, and I am good to close this module. Now, another thing that I want to remind people of, especially when it comes to year end, it will be January, sometimes February, people will call us up and say, hey, I'm running my purchases clearing report for 12/31, and I don't tie to my ledger, and it's the end of January. I said, well, you're not running your purchases clearing report for 12/31 because you can't do that. If you've had receipt of goods and receipt of invoices in that time period from the end of December through the time that you write that or print that report, you cannot get back to that number just by changing your date in the purchase order module. So please keep that in mind. Once those two are in balance, check that off your list, and then we head over to inventory. So what is the process we need to do in inventory before we attempt to do our month-end close? Well, we want to make sure that your valuation report balances to your general ledger. But before we do that, if you have FIFO, LIFO, lot, or serialized items, you want to run the negative tier report. Okay, what the negative tier report does for you is it will show you any costing tiers that you have out in the system that have gone negative. And I'm sure some of you who are printing that inventory valuation report, you see these over-distributed tiers. Next question people say to me is, how do I get an over-distributed tier? How did that happen? Well, what happened is we invoiced the customer before we had the quantity in inventory. That's what will cause an over-distributed tier. Now, when I run this negative tier report, it will show me the current quantity on hand, which in this case I have 992, and a tier, what my negative tier quantity is. If I don't have enough quantity on hand, then my running this negative tier report and the adjustment register won't fix these problems here because I don't have enough inventory. But I run the negative tier report, okay? Then I come here and I do the negative tier adjustment. And what this will do is it will take any of those positive tiers and it will automatically apply that negative tier to the positive tier for me. Those other ones that we looked at that I was truly negative in my quantity on hand. I have nothing to put that my negative tier against. I don't have a positive tier to go against. I will have to go into inventory adjustments. What I would have to do is come here, go to my transaction entry, and do inventory adjustments to fix those negative quantities. Okay, so after I've done that, I've run my negative tier adjustment report, and I've let the system fix the ones that it can. Then I've gone into inventory transaction entry. I've done my manual adjustments. Then what I do is I will run my inventory valuation report. Now keep in mind, we're still just prepping for period end. So I'm going to run my inventory valuation report. And what I can do here is I'm going to go to my last page because in theory, this number should balance to our ledger, the 103,911.28. Okay, so because I have multiple warehouses, instead of going to the general ledger because I have to look at two different ones, I'm going to go to my general ledger detail report so I can look at both of these at the same time. Okay, oh, I didn't create one. So I'm going to come down here to my account number, and I'm going to pull out my inventory warehouse. Let's look at, actually, let's look at my 102 here, looks like. I've got my notes, I'm going to preview that. And here's my, I know that didn't show up. There we go. The 103, 911, 28. So I tie. Okay, check that off my list. Inventory ties, PO ties. Keep in mind, if inventory doesn't tie, yeah, you kind of have to investigate why. Okay, maybe we got a costing problem, maybe we have a posting problem. You know, we kind of have to take a look and figure out why don't we tie. All right. Once we get that tied out, we got that to check off our list, and we're ready to close the period in inventory, which we'll come back to here in a minute. Okay, so those two modules. Now, let's go back to accounts payable. We're going to do the same thing in accounts payable. We're going to check out to make sure that our payables balance to the general ledger. So what I'm going to tell you is I would like you to run the accounts payable trial balance report. Now, I know all of our schooling has taught us over the years, you run the aging report. Yes, I understand that. But let me explain. The accounts payable trial balance report gathers its data based on posting date. Okay? So what does that mean? That means, let's say, for instance, it's July 1st. And I am actually still posting invoices for June 28th, and I forget to change my posting date. So if I run my aging report, which pulls data based on invoice date, it'll show up on my aging report. But since I posted with the July 1 posting date, it didn't hit my general ledger until July. Okay? So that's why we like for you to print the trial balance report. And oh yes, you can print both of them. And if they don't tie, you can lay them side by side and figure out who had a bit of a posting problem. And then we determine how we want to fix that. When you run the trial balance report, though, it's this invoice balance column that we're looking at. So we're tying down to this number right here, the 438,899.77. Once again, I have different divisions, and I have multiple GL account numbers for my AP. So I'm going to run the GL detail report rather than going to account maintenance. I think I just did one for AR, that's right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here, and I am going to go down to my AP accounts, and I'm going to pull them all, and I'm going to hope that I balance. So let's go into here. Let's see, I think I just want, oh yeah, I just want 01. Oh, let me take a step back. I don't want that one. I want the 01 and 02. So, and I'm going to come down to my 02. Okay. And I'm going to preview this. So we are looking at a total, a report total here of 438,899.77. And my trial balance report showed me 438,899.77. Whew, in balance. Hooray, I am very happy. So once again, I can check that off my list. Now, if it doesn't balance, you know, yeah, we're going to investigate, okay? If it doesn't balance to your aging report, yeah, you can go ahead and investigate that too, okay? But now that we know that that's in balance, we're going to check that one off our list. We know that we've done our homework for that one. Let's go to accounts receivable, and we're going to do the same thing. Under reports, same theory. We're going to do the trial balance report. Once again, it pulls based on posting date. So I'm running it as, you know, my month end. I'm going to hit my preview. And let's get to the last page here. Once again, we're looking at this number here, the 693,648. Okay, so let's go back to my accounts receivable, or excuse me, my general ledger. I actually did create myself a little report here. I called it AR because these are the two accounts that I use all the time. And I'm going to go ahead and summarize my detail on there because I don't need to see all those postings. And look here, I don't balance. 693,324, and I should be 693,648. And this is when, you know, your red flags go up and say, oh my goodness, what's happened? Why don't I balance? Well, we get this question all the time. And the first thing I tell people when they are out of balance like that is go back to the module and go to your general ledger transaction report. And then let's go ahead and print this and make sure that it's empty, because sometimes what happens is that people forget to post. Okay, so here I have an entry for 5/6 that's been sitting out here. So now you're scratching your head and you're saying, okay, Sue, how could this happen? How could this happen? Well, we've gone through and we printed a invoice register, or we printed a cash receipt register, whatever, and when the daily transaction register came up, instead of saying yes, somebody accidentally clicked no or clicked the red X to get out of the little box, like right here. They would have clicked this or they would have said no. Notice how that's the default. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and say yes. So that transaction register will sit out there the entire month, or well, months, until somebody actually posts it. So there's no big warning message that says, oh my goodness, you have unposted registers out there, you know, throughout the month. So that is also one of the things that I try to tell people to add to their month-end process is go to, you know, as you're reconciling these modules, click that daily transaction register. Make sure you don't have any unposted transactions out there. So now if I go back and I look at my general ledger detail report, since we have posted that transaction, let's go ahead and grab that AR again. I'm going to summarize it. It is posted, and I now have the correct number, the 693,648.75. So I balance to my accounts receivable. So woohoo, good. So, you know, and you'll notice that only takes it only takes a few minutes as long as you're in balance. It only takes a few minutes. But you know what? If we keep looking at this stuff throughout the month, you can check it any time during the month just to make sure that you stay on track. It makes month end a lot easier. So those are the 4 definite things that I want you to do before you even attempt period end. Okay. Now I brought this pop-up here for you. This closing order. You know, a lot of people say to me, well, where do I start? Which one do I close first? And let me tell you what, the biggest question, or not question, but the biggest pushback I'll say that people give me all the time is, well, I don't want to close a quarter because I don't want to lose my data. Or I don't want to close, not quarter, but I don't want to close the month because I don't want to lose my data. Well, okay. If you have your history options set up properly, you're not going to lose your data. So that is one thing. If you're new, or you've replaced somebody, or you just haven't looked at your history options in a long time, then you want to look at them now, get them set the way that you want to, so that you won't lose any data. This system actually keeps a lot of history out there. So, you know, you don't really need to be afraid. But what I always tell people is you start from the bottom of your list and you work up. And you notice that these are backwards from what we're used to seeing. You know, bill of materials, work order, barcode, PO, sales order, inventory, et cetera, et cetera. If you look at it from here, we're starting from the bottom and we're working up. Okay? So just a couple of things to keep in mind. Bill of materials actually doesn't have a period end, so to speak. They're just saying, hey, get all your transactions in there, make sure that you've done all your bills and you're done. Same thing with work order. Make sure that you've put all your transactions in for the month. Barcode doesn't really have a month end, and either does MRP for those of you who have that. And bank rec really doesn't have a month end, although we do, you know, we obviously want to reconcile our bank statement each month. Payroll is closed quarterly. So be very careful. Most of us have that down pat at this point in time, but payroll is closed quarterly, and general ledger is always closed last. Now, don't worry about, you know, closing general ledger at year end. I know that freaks out a lot of people because they know it's like, oh my gosh, the accountant's got entries that are coming and I don't want to close it. We are a multi-period product. So it does allow you to have multi-periods open if you choose to do so. So don't worry about that. But you got to keep in mind that someday we actually do want you to close that period. So let's kind of go down back to our purchase order module, and let's go to period end. So we've reconciled our purchases clearing report, and now we go into period end processing. Some of you will like to do the period end report selection. I feel like for me, by the time that I do period end, I don't need to reprint all those reports. They're like your open report and your recaps and all that. But if you're one of those people that likes to print those reports, you feel free to do so. You can do it from that menu, or if you just have this checkbox here, it will go ahead and print those for you. So here in your right here, it'll tell you what month that you're closing. You go ahead and click proceed, and what it'll do is it'll close that period. Now, one thing that I want to show you, we were talking about going to your setup options. Let's do that real quick before we close that. Days to retain completed purchase orders. I've got mine set to 120 days. Keep in mind, if you are on Sage 2015 or higher, you now have that new feature, the PO history file. We used to keep these open for 999 days. These are completed POs, and a lot of us would never close the purchase order module because we didn't want to lose anything, right? We didn't want to lose those POs that we refer back to. Well, version 2015 or higher now has that history function that keeps those POs for you. But the other tab that I want you to look at is this history tab here. Every module has one. Do I want to retain my purchase history? Yes. Number of years to retain purchase history by item and by vendor. I like to set mine to 10. We can keep up to, I believe, 99 in all these modules. You can do 99. I'm going to be retired, but you can do 99 if you wish. Do you want to retain receipt history? Yes. So you want to make sure these are turned on. If you haven't looked at these in a while, just pop in there. Take a look at it, okay, before you close your period end. So once again, we go to period end processing, and you just hit proceed, and it will do the period end for you. So what does it do? I'm just going to go through some things real quick here. It clears your expired master repeating orders. The completed POs that are over my 120 days, it's actually going to purge them out of my purchase order entry. Okay, purchase order entry. It's going to keep them in that purchase order history file, purges my recap, so, and at year end, it does some things to the year-to-date balances. It'll set them to 0 and prepare for the next year. So keep that in mind. So let's go ahead and let's talk about sales order and what we need to look at sales order. We're going to pop into these sales order options again real quick. And once again, I'm going to go to my history tab here. Do I want to retain my sales order quote history? I think everybody should have that turned on, both in PO and sales order. So you have that turned on. Once again, I'm retaining 10 years of sales history, and I'm going to retain my customer last purchase history. Some of us use that, some of us don't. So that is turned on. When I do period end in here, once again, looks exactly like we saw in PO. I'm going to take my reports off, but what does it do? Well, it purges the sales order recap if I have that selected in my sales order options to purge at period end. It'll purge master or expired repeating orders. Now keep in mind, on these master, both in PO and sales order, master orders, repeating orders, you can put an expiration date on those. So watch those very carefully, that if you do not want to lose them, you want to put that date out, really far into the future. Okay, and any sales order or sales history will be purged based on those number of days. You saw I had 10 on mine, so that will be purged out also. Now let's talk about inventory. Okay. Once again, with inventory, it's pretty well, it's turned on. Actually, I believe now in the inventory, the number of years is not in here. It's in common information now, or where you tell it how many years that you want to retain your history. And inventory is one of those that kind of retains it forever. You actually have to physically purge it in order to get the history out of there in inventory now. But period end processing is the same thing, very easy. You can run the reports. Valuation, you want a copy of that valuation, maybe the stock status report, and then you just hit proceed and boom, you're done on that one. Okay, let's go to, what do I have next? I have accounts receivable. I'm going to kind of change things up. And in here, oh, before I do that, let's go to the setup options. Once again, in here, what you're going to do, there's two things that I want you to pay attention to. Days to retain paid invoices. I like to keep those 999. So people say to me, well, that's not very long, Sue. Keep in mind what we're talking about here with number of days to retain paid invoices. When you're in customer maintenance or inquiry and you're on the invoices tab and you see the invoice and the payment or adjustment or credit memos or whatever, that's there. But when you're in, but you also have invoice history that does not purge until you purge it. So don't worry about that, the fact that this is only 999 days, I'm going to lose my history. No, we have it in other locations, it's just not on that particular tab. So we're going to hit the history tab here, and number of years to retain cash receipt histories. Once again, I went a little nutso there. I did 99 because I want it forever and ever and ever. I want my invoice history in detail. Remember I told you we have another invoice history inquiry that keeps that out there forever for us. And how long do I want to retain customer history or salesperson history? You know, maybe 10 years is a little bit much for you. You don't need to see that far back. Now, what does that pertain to? When you're in your customer maintenance or inquiry and you're on those, statistics tabs and the history tabs in there, and you're seeing the period to date history, that's what that's pertaining to. This is not the invoices itself. This is the invoices right here, okay? So check those, make sure you got them set the way that you want them. And you don't, once you do that, you don't have to check them again. And you just go into period end processing, and oh, look, I have an invoice in here, so I can't do my period end processing right now because I haven't posted an invoice. But you go into period end processing and then close the period. Let's go down to accounts payable, and same thing here. Let's look at our setup options. And obviously, you don't have to look at the setup options every month, but I have number of days to retain paid. In accounts payable vendor maintenance, I go to the invoices tab. This is what that's pertaining to right there. How often, how long do I want to see it versus my history here. Number of years to retain vendor history. And do I want to track my invoice and payment history? Well, yes, I do, because I want to go back out and see that stuff. I may not be able to see it on that invoices tab, but I want to be able to go to my payment inquiry or my vendor invoice inquiry, and I'll be able to see it out there until I physically purge that. So that's why I'm trying to tell you, don't be afraid. You're not going to lose stuff. As long as you have these setup options set properly. And then you go to your period end processing, and once again, I have a manual check in process, so I have to post these things before I can do my period end. You also want everybody out of your system when you're trying to do period end. You don't want them trying to post while you're trying to do a period end process. Do it in the evening when people are gone and you can pay attention to what you're doing and get it all done, boom, 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 and off your checklist. And I do recommend that you do a checklist. Yes, I closed this period. Yes, I closed this and wrote, did this report and so forth. Now, general ledger, period end, very simple. Some of the things that, obviously you're going to want to do with the general ledger. You've tied all your sub-ledgers out, your AR, your AP, et cetera. you're going to print your financial statements, review those, make sure that your expenses, look proper, that your income looks the way that it should, that you don't have something glaring out, like a misposting or glaring out at you, or you forgot to do your allocations or whatever. I personally like to run the general ledger detail report, but you can run that at any time. General ledger is really a good one for keeping the history. So if you come into your general ledger options and you tell the system how long you want to retain that general ledger history, that's all your transaction history. That's your balance history. So I like at least 10 years. You can set it to 99. That's fine. We would love to have you still on this 99 years from now. So definitely put it out as far as you are comfortable. But keep in mind that after it hit, when it gets to that 11th year, it's going to start purging that data out of the system. So, when you do your period end in general ledger, it's really a very simple process. Oh, my transaction detail is not empty. So I'm going to go here to my transaction register. I'm going to go ahead and print that, see what I've got sitting out here. And I have something from accounts payable. So I'm going to go ahead and post that. And then I'm going to go into my period end. And then it's going to allow me to close my period. So I'm going to hit proceed. I don't do allocations. So I'm going to go ahead and say, yes, I want to do this without my allocations, and say yes here. So now I've just closed that period. See how quick it was? And you'll see the same thing in each one of your modules. It'll be very quick like that. Now, so, and one of the things that I have had people say to me is, especially after year end, that, hey, I need to reopen the year, or I need to reopen the month in general ledger because I need to do a journal entry that I missed. Now this is, kind of a bonus round for you here. If I can get my mouse to behave itself, all of a sudden it decides not to. Take the old batteries out, put it back in, see if it'll come back to life for me. Oh goodness gracious. All right, so bonus round without a mouse. This is good. Hold on one second. Technical difficulties here. Let me do this. Well, what I was going to tell you is that, yes, you can reopen a period or a year in the general ledger rather easily. And what you can do is you go here to general ledger options. And if I needed to post back in May, all I have to do is come here, change that back to May, and then click on accept. And it now allows me to reopen that period. So there we go. If I need to reopen a year, I can come into general ledger options, and I can say, okay, I need to go to this year. I need to go to period 12, click accept, and I have now reopened that year. So you are able to do that with the general ledger very easily. And I actually have some clients to help prevent their staff from posting into the wrong period. Even though they may not be ready to close the month, they actually are flipping that to the next month to kind of try to prevent them from making big boo-boos. But, that's optional. Either way around it, that is how you can reopen a period. So I know I went through this very quickly because we only have 30 minutes and there was a lot of stuff to cover, but I do have all the documentation ready. I'll get it out to you guys as soon as possible. I don't see any questions today, so everybody must be going, yeah, I'm doing that already with our period ends, and I know I'm reconciling and everything is looking good. If you have problems when you come to period end and some of the stuff doesn't reconcile and you're not sure how to find it, let us know. We will help you and show you how to analyze that and figure out where the posting went wrong, or find the posting that is in the wrong month or the wrong year or whatever, because people do make boo-boos, and their fingers get to future periods and so forth, and it can post way out there on you. But if you have any questions on period end, please let us know. Also, if you have any future Tech Tuesdays that you would like to see, I'm building one right now where I'm trying to come up with some topics, but we've got a couple in our mind here that we're going to have here for you real shortly. I hope you enjoyed this today, and if you have any further questions, give us a call. Otherwise, we made it somewhat within our time period. I got closer this time. And have a great day. Let me know if we can do anything for you, and I hope to see you in Chicago next month. Have a great day, everybody. Bye now.